Hey everyone, welcome back to another 31-minute podcast. Here I am. Hello, Jod. Sorry.
Good morning.
Hello. Here I am with, well, you like to be called BJ.
I do.
Barbara Jane.
Yeah.
You're the first politician I've ever interviewed.
Okay, well, that's a great honour.
Yeah. And I've thought a lot about this one, and there's a couple of reasons I wanted to interview you today. But is anything off limits? Maybe
no, I don't
you can
think
just tell me
so.
if it is.
Yeah, I don't think so. No.
There's a lot of questions I have to ask just about what's going on in the landscape at the moment. But maybe first, what about you? Like how long ago did you become a politician? And you were a nurse before. Yeah,
I was. So I became a member of United Australia Party when I heard that Craig Kelly, the ex-Liberal MP, left the Liberal Party and came over to United Australia Party.
Yeah.
And so I became a member of the party then. And then as things got worse and the state of Australia became what it was, I put my hand up to represent United Australia Party as the candidate. And it was really just about a protest, a personal protest for me, just so I could feel like I was doing something from the inside of my home. I never, ever expected to get in or be chosen because I've got no history with politics. As you say, I'm a nurse. And
you're in mental health after that week.
So I trained originally in the old school at St Vincent's Hospital at in the city, in Darlinghurst, and I worked eventually in ICU, so I trained in ICU nursing for 10 years at Hornsby Hospital, and then I developed quite a severe allergy to latex and gloves in ICU, so I had to retrain in counselling and psychology. And then so I became a counsellor and a registered counsellor and a mental health nurse as well, because I kept up my registration. So I've worked here on the coast for the last 6 years in mental health, seeing clients. I did used to work in tertiary mental health care at Gateway in Gosford, working with child and adolescent mental health.
I spoke there once.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, right. Yeah, so I worked in various programs at CAMS, and then I left the New South Wales Health after like 35 years to chase a career, and I ended up in a local not-for-profit working as an operations manager, managing mental health programs and making sure that people have equity and access to programs in our vulnerable communities. And so I wasn't seeing clients, and I hadn't seen clients for 2 years. And that's when we had the pandemic and the lockdowns. And I just needed to do something for myself and to feel like I had some sort of control, that I had some sort of voice that was being heard. And I put my hand up and here I am. So when I spoke to the state director of the United Australia Party saying, I did not expect this, and why did you choose me? And she said, we wanted normal people. We didn't want people with an experience of politics. We want people to feel like they're just everyday normal people representing you, and that you're standing up and doing something. So that was why I was chosen, and that was my motivation, because I just could not sit by and watch what was happening, knowing what I knew and what I've known for 10 years really, and it was just increasingly obvious to me that the things that I had read and learnt about were coming to a head, basically.
Yep.
So it was just a feeling of helplessness that I wanted to do something to help.
Yeah, that's so good. There's two reasons I want to interview you today. One is how to vote, because I think no one has any idea.
Yeah.
And one of Jordan's owners is right. It's funny, Alan is, I don't know how it all works. I know nothing. By the way, before this pandemic, I didn't even care who was the government. I didn't care. I didn't even know the Premier's name. I wouldn't have a clue. Now I'm like fully educated on the whole thing. But I was, Alan, one of Jordan's owners, is there a panel that sits and picks people for candidates or something he sits on a panel of some sort. Like he's been invested in the Liberal Party his whole life. He's just changed to go UAP now.
Wow. And
because of the whole, feeling around it all and where it's all going.
Yeah.
So one, I want to talk about how to vote, but also, politics and its bearing on everything at the moment as well. And is it really as corrupt as people say?
Absolutely, it is.
It is? Yeah,
I get people coming up to me all the time. I actually had a really good conversation with a lady last night, and at a meet the candidate function, and she used to be a very integral part of the Labor Party. And I won't say any more information than that, but she said they're as absolutely as corrupt as you can get.
Is it?
They're totally out there for themselves to line their own pockets. They don't care about people, about actually representing the people that they were voted in by. And because when you're an integral part of something like that, you obviously know what your opposition is doing. She said they're the same. The factional system inside the political parties is so entrenched that nobody, by the time they get to anything looking like power, is able to think for themselves.
Is that right?
They hate each other inside their own parties and they will not work with each other. They won't cooperate. And so no wonder it's absolute chaos. And we just see, you know, I mean, at the moment there's press about the Liberal being factional and they couldn't choose people for seats, and there was all that stuff where they took each other to legal to be able to run their own party. So, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg that we actually see when it erupts, you know, in a moment of time. But that is going on all the time for both factions. And you know, I've only been involved since January, but I know this already. But they keep it very quiet and it's hidden because they're basically, you know, I feel like they're in bed with the media.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it doesn't get seen by anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Albanese doesn't seem to be too smart. Well, ScoMo doesn't either. They seem to be just like, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
they're So how's UAP? Do you think UAP? How does it all work?
Yeah.
Like you got Labor and Liberal, and I can't stand either of them. And then Clive,
Yep.
but Mark Kelly's the guy.
Craig Kelly.
Sorry, Craig Kelly.
Yeah.
Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly's a George Brown guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craig Kelly. So, I mean, what's the chances of him becoming
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, or like it just for so long it's just been Labor and Liberal.
Yeah.
But UAP obviously is getting bigger.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, what's the chances of all that? Because I'm not exactly sure where all that sits.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a good question because obviously the public decides, but
Can it be rigged?
look, I'm pretty sure anything can be rigged, and it does make me think twice about the silent majority that brought in Scott Morrison.
Right.
That was the unwinnable election, and we always hear about that. So, I mean, it does make you think about that, about the ways that could happen. But you know, in UAP, we're doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen. And I know Clive, when he was originally elected with his seat, originally I think it was in 2013, he actually does an interview about that, about what he saw as the issues and the problems in that. So I know that he's aware of it,
Yeah.
and the inconsistencies that could be taken for granted.
So what's the go with, you jump in, George, if you have anything to say. You're a young man.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say?
Well, I'm more curious to know about BJ.
Yeah.
You obviously love people and taking care of people because that's pretty well the basis of nursing. And then you went into mental health, which I'm sure is very difficult.
Yeah.
And you said at one point you just went, "No, this is enough," and become a politician. I'm curious to know what that was. Was it just a build-up of stuff, or you mentioned at the beginning of the pandemic, was there something in particular that you went, "Nah, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave everything that I've been passionate about for 30 years and become a politic
Yeah.
to try and navigate the country through all this corruption." That's what interests me a lot. Yeah.
Look, there was a moment actually, and look, right at the beginning, I'm a person that I've learnt over many, many years to hold my views lightly. That's a real, it's an enduring principle that I follow, because I believe that if you get stuck in your ways, you never learn anything, and new things are always happening. And what we're meant to do as human beings is scan our environment, see any new information, integrate it, and then move and use that information to then make our life better moving forward. But I see a lot of people that are just so stuck in their ways, and I learnt not to do that because of some challenges that I had early in my life that created that way of being for me. So early on in the pandemic, I was cautious myself. You know, I was sort of happy to be in a lockdown thinking, let's just wait and see what happens. You know, let's wait and see what this virus is. They were talking about, you know, really high mortality rates to begin with, and having that medical background, I'm like, well, this actually could be serious. Let's do the right thing. But as time went on, and I'm talking a few weeks, I realised that there was a lot of inconsistencies with this. And one of those moments was when I saw a post from Professor Barodi, and you would know his name, and he talked about early intervention for the pandemic, and that basically if we used that early intervention, that we'd be able to shut the pandemic down within 6 weeks. And look, I went down the rabbit hole, I did all my own research, and I concurred. I thought, well, absolutely, this is a drug that is used all over the world, is well respected, even as a drug won a Nobel Prize, and yet...
Yeah, ivermectin.
Yeah. And so he actually tried to ring the health minister. He couldn't get past the minders. And I knew right then and there that something was wrong, and that we were being sold a lie, and that if they shut that down instead of trying to actually help people, that there was something majorly wrong, and this was part of, you know, a greater plan. And whatever reason you give to that, whether it's sinister or whether it's just about lining people's pockets and pharmaceutical companies, you know, that's up to people to research for themselves. But so I knew that was wrong, and from that moment on, I felt like that, you know, I had a whole history of looking at patterns in government and looking at decisions that people make, and knowing that the government isn't there for our best interest. It's not. It has never been there for our best interest, not for a very long time, I believe. And I'm sure there's people that are more expert at that, but I have learnt over the many years to trust my gut instinct. And when I saw his post, especially from Dr. Barodi, and I know his work, and I know that he's got integrity and is an incredibly smart man who's been in medicine for a long time, I thought, this is actually wrong, and there's something wrong with this, and people are going to die because of it. And I knew that right from the very beginning. So that was the moment for me where I felt like, you know, that I had to do something, but I didn't quite know what it was at that stage.
You said off camera just before we were chatting, which interests me the most, because I always say to Matt, why don't they just make a decision but then explain why they have, rather than just be real vague about stuff, never give anybody an explanation, and everybody's got to try and work it out. Like when Matt makes a decision for our business, he'll say, I'm the boss and this is which way we're going, way we're going, and this is why. So we can all understand it, and we go, okay, I might not exactly agree, but I can see his point of view. But you said off camera that it's the same chances for somebody vaccinated versus unvaccinated to give but also get the virus. When did they find that out? Like at what point? Yeah,
well, look, I'm not sure exactly what point they found that out, but it was definitely quite early on, because there was a particular study, and, you know, I can get these references for you later if you're interested, if your listeners are interested, but there was a particular study saying the viral load, and they measure that by swabbing people's noses and their back of their throats, is exactly the same for somebody that is unvaccinated versus vaccinated. And I'm pretty sure that at that stage it was like the first vaccination level that they found that, but it was just buried. And we know that the media is so heavily censored that people just don't get the information, and it's really hard to sort of stomach that people are out there with no information, and they don't even know where to look.
So, like, has Scott Morrison sold us out?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to who?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think that, look, you know, these sort of things are becoming more common knowledge about the World Economic Forum. I mean, you know, you see people that aren't on the same page, they literally roll their eyes every time you mention that name, but we've been branded conspiracy theorists for a reason, to try and stop that information getting to people and being powerful, and to stop people actually making decisions with that information. And there is a global organisation called the World Economic Forum. It is not a government representation. They haven't been elected. They've elected themselves. And they are tied with the UN, and there is a program for global leaders that a lot of them go to, and they're groomed for that, and then they're groomed into the system, and then they're spit back out into parliaments. And there was even a recent clip of Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum saying that a lot of their leaders are in all the cabinets and power in the world, and he admitted it. So, you know, whether you want to call that a conspiracy theory or you want to call that truth, that is the situation that we have.
So what does Clive think about that?
He is disgusted, actually. I've spent quite a bit of time since January with Clive, face to face.
Got more money than most of them, so
Yeah.
he can go and buy them all out.
Exactly. And, you know, he's really an interesting, fascinating man, and he is, with my discernment, which I think is pretty good, studying people my whole life, he is authentic. I went to a press conference with him on Saturday down in Sydney, and he just wants to save Australia. He's got 2 young children still. He's got a beautiful family with a loving wife, and he does not want to hand over an Australia that is controlled by global interests to his young children who are still in primary school. So he absolutely understands what is going on.
So you know how there was that one of the rallies, and they were saying that Craig Kelly, was doing the Illuminati sign. Was that just fake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely not part of that system.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what that sign was. But look, I totally understand.
Like a triangle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I totally understand people sort of overcorrecting because they feel betrayed. As a nation,
Yeah, I think
we
everyone's
feel
paranoid.
Yeah, we feel betrayed. And so constantly I get this question, are you sure you're going to do what you're going to do? Because nobody trusts politicians anymore because of the fake promises and then the backflips. And
It's just amazing that people can lie so much.
It is.
Like just lie and say anything, but nothing seems to ever happen.
Yeah.
Like around anything.
Yeah.
Like whether it's Fauci or whether it's Bill Gates or whether it's ScoMo or whether it's Albanese. Like it's like we're watching really a bad movie.
It totally
And
is.
it's just like you happen to be in it.
Yeah.
Can you tell Clive to bring in a policy with the media that if anybody's gets fact checked and caught lying and there's no evidence behind it, they lose their license and get huge fines? I find it so curious because if we list a property at $1 million, but we tell it by $850,
they're owned by people.
Yes.
We tell it by $850, we get a huge fine, we lose our license. But the media
the
can say
media's
one
funded
thing
by
with no
pharmaceuticals.
evidence. I don't get it.
I know. I totally agree. And that's absolutely bizarre to me because the thing that I think about as a health professional and in the counselling game, we are so heavily regulated that if we did one thing that was inappropriate or illegal or unethical, we would face losing our registration and that you wouldn't be able to get back in. But you look at these pharmaceutical companies and over and over again, they kill people, they maim people, they lie, they cheat, they steal, they fraud, they're unethical, and they just get a fine and off they go to do it again. It's the most bizarre thing I think that I've ever seen, to watch that process and think that this is a sane world.
Yeah. So
that policy, if you listen, and I will send it to you, the copy of the press speech that Clive just said, years and years ago, apparently, and I didn't know this, and I learnt this on Saturday, that there was an actual policy, I think it was called the Fair Media Policy, and they were actually legislated to tell both sides of the story and not lead people on, and if they didn't, they could be fined, and
that's what needs to happen.
And that's what needs to happen. And I can tell you now that if we had majority government, all of these things would start to happen and we would actually have free press again and people would be able to do their jobs, get back to normal, have a prosperous Australia, because they have sold us out for 50 years, obviously longer. We know that it's part of their plan. Whether Australia's been part of that plan for so long, I don't know, but it could not be clearer that they have bankrupted us and on purpose, and they have no plan to get us out of it. So they just want us to keep going along that plan, whatever that is in the end.
So let's go back to the UAP and Clive and how that's going to go. So where does it stand at the moment? So obviously you're getting a lot of traction. I'm watching a lot of Clive's videos. Yep. I used to think, I don't know why, maybe it was the way the media portrayed it. I thought Clive was just a bit of a rogue, but I really like what he's saying. I loved one video, I've said it many times to Jordan, he did it, I don't know, maybe it was an interview, it was maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, and he said that, this country's in a lot of debt.
Yep.
It's bordering on bankruptcy, and he said that these people that are running it don't understand money.
Yeah.
They have a knowledge of it, but he said he's used to living with billions and managing billions on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it really struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
Because you do need a businessman running the country.
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't matter what people think of Clive, he's a successful man.
Yeah.
I like him. More and more I see him, the more I like him. So where does it actually stand? Because they're calling is it the 4 major parties, and you're one of them? And I'm seeing a lot of posts. Actually, I screenshotted one I saw yesterday.
Okay.
And because you're right, I think the public is hypersensitive to fakeness.
Yep.
And there was one that
It's sort of something that happens all the time in psychology, is that when you get burnt by something, you usually overcorrect your behaviour until you come back into balance.
Yeah.
And in a population level, that is definitely happening now, but it takes a longer for people to come back to balance.
So this post here is
Right.
it's
I didn't see that
Ricardo
one.
Bossi and Ozzy
Cossack, yeah.
and it says put the 4 majors last, and you're one of them.
Yes.
So Libs, Labor, Greens, and UAP.
Yeah.
But tell me about that.
Yeah.
Why would they be saying that?
Look, I haven't actually watched that, and I know that that stems from a video that Craig Kelly, our leader, put up about the fact that there is some media hype about us preferencing Liberals.
Yeah.
And it's actually
I
not
did
true.
think that. I became a member of your thing as soon as I saw it all happening.
Yeah.
And then when I heard that, because I think there was a video and Craig was... No, maybe it was Romeo. Romeo
Oh, yeah.
was saying that you're lying, they're lying, everything's going to go Liberals. And I literally, that moment, went, nah, I don't want to know anything about them.
Yeah, I
So can you
stopped listening
explain all that?
I stopped listening to Romeo months ago.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think he makes sense to me, and there's just something about him that my gut instinct doesn't like, and I'm not quite sure. I can't put my finger on it, just like a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that he's got the right information. And so, look, that came from this video that Craig put up about that we haven't preferenced the Liberals. In the Senate, we haven't preferenced them at all. And a lot of seats, they're very, very low down in our ballot ticket. But as you know, or you mightn't know, in Western Australia, the Liberals and the Labor Party have preferenced themselves, which is literally unheard of. It's never before
Really?
happened. So that
can you
means...
explain what that means?
Yeah. So this whole thing of put the majors last was a campaign so that Liberal and Labor can't win on preferences, because our system, and I'm learning this pretty recently myself, even though I had an idea of what it was, but it's actually very complicated, which is why people don't learn it, because it's really complicated to think about the preference system and how it works. But the preference system is when you are counting the ballots, if the primary vote is the number one vote. So if you put 1 for UAP, that is called a primary vote. And so if somebody doesn't get more than 50% on their primary vote, then they will not get straight in, and it has to rely on preferences.
Oh, really? So if UAP
Yep.
get 38%, you're
Yes.
talking of the population?
Yes.
yeah?
Well, I'll just talk in the electorate.
in
Let's
this
talk
electorate.
about Robertson.
So this is your one. Okay,
Yes.
so if you get 38% in Robertson,
Yes.
all of your votes go to the next person, does it?
No, so they count them up on first counts, and then the person who gets the least vote, then they get knocked out, and
Right.
whatever's on their ticket in their preferences then gets given to other people. So if just say Party C has the least amount of primary votes, the first vote, then they look at their ticket and they say, oh, who's number 2 on their card? And it might be UAP. So then I get that vote, and that increases my vote, and eventually whoever gets to the 50%...
Right. So it's on that individual card.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
Not the whole thing.
not the whole
I
thing.
was like picturing like a million votes go to the next person.
Yeah, well,
right.
I mean, it sort of does work like that at a population level, but
Yeah.
we're talking about an electoral level. So there's 151 electorates in Australia, and they're all about 100,000 people. And that's why they sort of move the boundaries every now and then, because every electorate has to be sort of fair, and 100,000 people, and then of that 151 electorates, whoever gets the majority of those electorates or seats in the lower house then forms government. So the best case scenario is for a government to get 76 seats, and that is the majority, and they're the people that form the government and become the Prime Minister.
So, yes. So when Clive says, he said it just recently, because he's been quizzed this a lot lately about going to the Liberals,
Yes.
like the preferences, when he says he's not preferencing anybody, he's there to win.
Yep.
Can you choose who you preference? Can you? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So as a voter, individual voter, you can choose to put your numbers wherever you want.
But just on that, can Clive say, I want all of my preferences to go to Pauline Hanson? Can they do deals or something?
He can suggest it, because what we have is a how to vote card. So we give those suggestions, and they're the things that you get handed on polling day that people shove in your face.
Right.
And that's a suggestion about how to vote. And yes, we do talk to each other as parties and say, well, we think this is better for us, and can you do this? But they're only suggestions. Where in times past, it used to be that those suggestions were more of a backroom deal, and then preferences would just be given despite what people said. Okay. It doesn't work like that anymore. It is literally what's on that ballot card, and you decide. But the thing is that because people are uneducated and they don't care, rightly or wrongly, that's their choice, that's a democracy, they actually look at the how to vote card and they follow that, because if they want UAP to get in, they will just follow that. And so they are a powerful tool for parties to steer preferences, but it still is people's choice.
Well, you said to me, you ran through what... Yeah, jump in if you have any questions. No, you said when we had a chat on the phone the other day, you told me the order that they're in, and I was surprised where Liberals were.
Yeah. So this is the other part to that scenario that we've got in Western Australia, because if the Liberals and Labor preference themselves, that means that all of the freedom parties and other minor parties are literally cut out. So it's going to be very interesting to watch the difference in election results in WA, where they've done that, compared to New South Wales, where they haven't done it. And they haven't done it here because Clive does have some sway with the Liberals, and we have put them, higher up on our card, I reckon, than what I would have liked myself for my own electorate. But that was a decision made at a national level. But it's still number 5, and we still have other freedom parties above her. And so what they've done is that they looked at every seat strategically and said, what is the best way that we can get BJ elected into power? Because UAP is a party of pragmatists, really, and that's sort of why I resonate with them. What's the best way that we can get BJ into Canberra so we can actually start making some difference? And there's a fine line between pragmatism and selling out your party. But the way that they've done it is that because Liberal is number 5 on our ticket and I'm number 3, hopefully UAP will get a big primary vote. I expect that we'll get the biggest primary vote of all the independents.
Can you explain that again quickly? Sorry. Yeah. You said Liberals number 5 and you're number 3?
No, I'm number 3 on their card.
On their card.
Right, sorry. Yeah. So that's
you're number
the
1 on your card, they're number 5, they're
yes.
number 1 on theirs, and you're number 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what happens then is, because I expect to get a large primary vote, because we do have a national campaign and that does make a difference, that it should be the 3 of us at the top, and then once the smaller parties are excluded because they've got less votes, then their preferences will come to me and hopefully be enough to put me over the 50%, and then I'll get into power.
Yeah,
So it's really interesting because...
That'd be good.
Yeah, it is.
We got to interview you at the beginning.
Yeah, well,
Imagine
look, I hope... I know.
When you're like smashing Klaus Schwab's face in.
Well, look, I so hope that we can be an example for the whole world about how to get rid of the global interests in our country and to stop selling out.
That's going to happen? Do you think it's doable?
I hope so. I mean, it's a huge job, and I know that it's going to take more than 3 years, which is 1 term, but I hope that, at the very least we get the balance of power. But, I mean, wouldn't it be great if the silent majority brought us in like they did with Scott Morrison? There's a lot of people out there that feel like they have no voice. It was very interesting at this Meet the Candidate event last night, and afterwards you get lots of comments from people, why aren't people asking this question and that question and this question? It's because people feel so scared these days to bring up anything controversial, because they're scared of the loud minority that just crucify everybody for having an opinion. You're not allowed to have a politically incorrect opinion anymore. It's just become, social suicide to mention anything.
How's UAP looking across the board?
Really good, like for the national polls at the moment, and it's really interesting talking about the media blackout because they don't even mention our name.
I saw one you were like 3% or something, and I was like, no, it can't be right.
That's wrong, absolutely wrong.
Is that from the media?
Yeah. So what is the national polls are saying at the moment is 30, 30 and 30.
Really?
About, yeah,
Oh,
30 for
good.
Liberal, 30 for Labor and 30 for other. So, we're in amongst a lot of those others, and but I can assure you that we'd probably be the biggest in that other group, but they just really won't even mention our name because they don't want to give us any airtime, basically.
Yeah. How's Pauline Hanson go?
Look, a lot of people love Pauline, and to give her credit, she's been in politics for a long time. It's not my style. I think that, sort of that emotional standpoint, I think, doesn't do her any favours, I don't think. But, she's been there for a long time and she has fought for the Australian people. The reason why on Robertson's ballot paper, she's actually underneath, she's at a lower level, she's number 6 on our ballot paper, is that our national take on it is that Pauline Hanson's One Nation has put up a lot of ghost candidates around the country. So she's also one of the sort of other parties, I'm going to say, who's got 151 candidates around the country, but a lot of them actually aren't real candidates. They're not contactable, they're not campaigning, they're just a name on the ticket to get more votes. And, that's what they've done at a national level, and that's their choice. We've actually got 151 real people who are like me, who are lawyers, doctors, dentists, podiatrists, real people who've had real world experience that just feel compelled to do something. We've all got careers. Although I don't anymore because I lost my job due to the mandates. But UAP has this whole, lot of people that are what I call values-driven politicians, not poll-driven politicians. And that's super important for me. And I know a lot of the Sydney candidates, and there's a lot of people with very high values who just feel so strongly, exactly like we do, about where Australia's going and how it's been pushed there. And pulling that back and getting back to what we used to be, a profitable nation that is the lucky country.
Clive seems pretty committed.
Oh, he absolutely is. At the launch, I wasn't there, but I know that he basically said, I will fight to my dying breath to save Australia. And that's, he's been crucified in the media and he has such a bad rap down here on the eastern states, but that's by design. And as we know, pretty much whatever the media says, you can go the opposite. So if you believe the media or don't believe the media, he's actually a really great guy, authentic. Yes, he's a hard businessman. He made more money than anybody during the pandemic. So when I talk to people about Clive, I say, why would he stop the pandemic if he was money orientated? He made more money than anybody, so he could keep it going. He could just do what everybody else is doing and be part of the COVID alarmism and panic. But he doesn't believe in it, and he understands the agenda in a private one-on-one way. He understands the agenda totally, but he won't talk about it and he won't be lured into it because he's a pragmatist and he wants to bring people along, and he believes that majoring and focusing on the financial crisis that we are going to have is the best way to bring people along and to not talk about conspiracy theories. So he will not be distracted. He's a very focused man.
So can there be a royal commission into the decisions that have been made over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or is it too corrupt? Can they actually find a board of people that will look at the decisions and say, hang on a second, you made the right decision, or you completely shafted everybody? You never see any politicians or anybody that makes these decisions actually get jail time or there seems to be no punishment. It's like, well, we'll just take him out of the limelight and
put him in the cupboard on a board
of somewhere, and we'll pop somebody else in. It just, I look at it as in my career and our career, and what you were saying, we do the slightest thing wrong, and the punishment is so big, and it could just be not that anything's ever happened, but you do hear about agents and things like that, but that's normally 1 or 2 people that have been affected. We're talking millions of people. But it doesn't seem like anything ever happens.
No, I know.
It's like you can just make the decision, and if you get it wrong, oh well.
Yeah, oh well. I totally agree. Yeah. And it's the most interesting moment I had the other day when I realised as a counsellor and working in mental health, I see a lot of different personality types, and I realised that our government is a narcissist, and they've gaslighted us. They have lied to us. They are literally delusional. When I hear the Liberal people talk about a strong economy, I just have my mouth open. I just still cannot believe that they can literally say
1.3 trillion in debt.
1.4.
4.
Yeah,
right.
and they are delusional. I sat at the pub test and watched Scott Morrison in the front row tell me that he was for a strong economy. And I'm just like, people are lapping this up. They're so clever and charismatic, and they're really good speakers, and people just lap it up and don't even think twice about it. There's no critical skills of thinking anymore. But absolutely, I'll get back to your question about people not being accountable. You know, we believe at the UAP that there should be a federal independent Commission Against Corruption, ICAC. And so there is plenty of people that are independent, and it is going to take a while to weed that out. But I believe that if we had a majority government, people would be coming out of the woodwork and starting to say, I didn't agree with it and I did this, and there'll be whistleblowers all over the place, I believe. But we are definitely saying that one of the important things if we get in is a federal ICAC, and that federal ICAC will have powers to be able to investigate any wrongdoing. And as a democratic society, we can't just fling accusations around and then haul them into jail. And so we have to actually do proper inquiries. But then if there's any wrongdoing or criminal behaviour, people will be prosecuted, absolutely, and have to pay for what they did. And a royal commission,
completely fair.
I know, exactly.
Like, I can't just go and run my car into a thing and go, oh, sorry about that.
No, absolutely. So, you know, that covers all these suppression orders that we hear about that are starting to become sort of mainstream. Well, not more knowledge.
Don't get me started on the suppression orders. Yeah.
So we would definitely be investigating these 28 people, and there's more than 28. That's just the sort of well-known piece of document that Senator Heffernan talked about in Parliament that we've, you know, a lot of people have seen his video and all the stuff that he did. There's absolutely more than that, and that will be a big part of that investigation right from the beginning, that we open that up. No suppression orders. Nobody decides to suppress something. And the reasoning is absolutely bizarre, because we would lose trust in the judicial system. I mean, how ridiculous. Yes, of course we would.
If you were doing the right thing,
we wouldn't. That's exactly right. It's just like one of those, you know, things that they throw around that's like a gaslighting thing of, we're doing it for you, you know, we're controlling you, but we love you at the same time. It's like a trauma bond.
People are smart enough. If you report both sides of the story, then at least people can make a decision.
That's right.
I do really believe that people are waking up, especially young people.
Oh, that's good.
We're all tech kind of people.
Yeah.
It's a shame that my grandparents and mum and dad grew up with a radio and newspaper, because that's much easier controlled. It's a shame that Facebook and Instagram, we know it's been censored.
Yeah.
They're saying it's been censored.
Yes. It's not even
But then you've got Elon Musk that comes in and says, I just think everybody should be able to say their own opinion.
Yep.
And the public should be able to make a decision around that.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you know, with
there's no logic anymore.
No, there isn't. The censorship thing, one of our policies is to get rid of the censorship off our social media. You know that our leader, Craig Kelly, has been banned from Facebook for life.
Really?
Yeah, he can't be on Facebook. And it was actually
Zuckerberg.
It was actually a video of him speaking in Parliament that got him banned for life. So they are literally censoring our electoral processes.
But isn't that interesting? Who says that his opinion's wrong to the other person?
Absolutely.
I don't understand.
They've even admitted that the fact checkers are just ordinary people that have been told this is the narrative, censor anything that doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah, both ways though.
Yeah,
If Clive was, or whoever was, totally had full reign to do the thing, and the Liberal and Labor, I'd be saying the same thing.
Absolutely.
I'd be saying, even if I didn't agree with what they were saying, I would still say, like, they are entitled to an opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody should be able to hear the whole story and make a decision.
It's about...
Not you can't talk, but
that's
you
right.
can.
It's about a respectful exchange of ideas, and that's how our democracy is supposed to work. And literally last night when I was giving my speech and presentation, there was 9 candidates sitting at the front of the meeting, and one of the candidates was having a good old laugh when I was presenting, and I stopped and I said, "Excuse me, I didn't laugh when you were giving your presentation, even though I think that I didn't say this, but even though I think you've drunk the Kool-Aid, but I didn't laugh because it's about you're allowed to have your ideas, and so should we." Yeah. And her demeanour changed straight away, and apparently she, her demeanour changed, and somebody from the audience said, she changed straight away and realised that she'd been disrespectful. But we've been given permission by a narcissistic government to be disrespectful and to bully people and to go over their civil rights. That's what they've done.
Oh, well, I think that's exactly what this is about, like freedom, and it's about how do we. We could talk about this all day, by the way.
We
but
could.
We so just quickly explain to me before we finish. Upper house and lower house.
Yep.
How does it all work?
Yep. So the upper house is the Senate, and they are there specifically as a house that's called a house of review. So in the lower house is the one that decides who the government is, Labor, Liberal, UAP. So like I said, there's 151 seats. The majority
is that
government...
the lower house?
Yes.
151?
The House of Representatives is the lower house.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many are actually in the Senate, but they have a different way of operating.
Clive is in the Senate?
He is in the Senate.
Craig is in the...
Craig will be a lower house person, and that means that if we get the majority, 76 seats in the election, that he will become the Prime Minister, and it will be a UAP government. So that's how, and then what happens is the lower house introduces all the bills. So all those legislations and the rules and regulations that we have all get introduced at the lower house level, the House of Representatives. It gets debated in that house, and then I think once the debate is done and the decision is made, it then goes through to the Senate, and they're the House of Review. So oftentimes what happens is that, it doesn't matter what the government wants in that lower house. If it doesn't get through Senate, it doesn't get passed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's a tricky way of doing it, but at the same time, that's meant to be that process. So strange bills can't be introduced by just any rogue politician. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you have the control and you're corrupt, then you can...
Without the corruption, it's a perfect system.
Absolutely. And this is what I say. There's been a real overcorrection, and I see that in some of the policies of the other parties that I talk to. And one party in particular, who is it? I think it was One Nation. They talk about this referendum, and to me it's a sign of the overcorrection that we're having as a population, that we want to just have referendums and let the people decide everything. That and people want to know where UAP stood on that because they think it's a good idea, and I just have to be true to myself. I don't think it's a good idea. Too many cooks spoil the broth. We have to be able to have, I said, if you elect the right people, you don't have to have a referendum every week and ask the people. People need to be able to be free to go about their business, have small businesses, be prosperous, have families, and let the politicians do what they're supposed to do, but without being corrupt.
Nothing would imagine you asking all of your staff on every change in the business what they wanted.
Yeah.
You'd just never get anywhere, would you? You can't run a business like that. You can't run a government like that.
Yeah, even with this business, I have a business partner that runs the whole thing.
Yes.
We're just out of his way. And we trust him,
Yeah.
Okay, so we just got a follow how to vote card for the UAP if people are interested in that.
Yes.
And try and save the country. So if you're interested in saving Australia, UAP is good. And I'm sure we'll got more things to talk about later in another one as well. I'd love to catch up with you again at some point.
Yeah, look, I'd love to. I think it's really great to access more people in this way. And I'm really keen to access the younger people because I feel like they've been herded into a way of believing and thinking that is wrong. And, I'd love to be able to just give them some different information that they might want to hear about the environment, about how we deal with that, about policies that are important to them and how they're going to afford a home, what they're going to grow up into, how they're going to have their families and their children going forward. I think there's a lot of information that they need to be able to make an informed decision.
I think that's exactly right. That's exactly why I'm doing this because, I've got kids. Jackson's sitting over there. He's 22, 2, and Jordan, like they got their whole lives ahead of them, and to navigate through a world where they have choice is good, but to navigate through a world where they're restricted is not good. Yeah. So how can people help you? Like what's the how can people assist?
Yeah. Look, at the moment
you're not funded by Clive.
No, look, we have a certain amount of funding in the fact that all the signs you might see in Robertson, we were given a lot of resources from Clive that was national, and the money that he spends is going to a national advertising campaign, and the things that we do on a local level are funded by me personally. So I'm basically a volunteer, and I work part-time as a therapist, as a counsellor, just in the meantime while I wait to see what my future holds.
Yeah.
I hope it's in Canberra, but you know, the people will decide. So people can actually help in the short term, but if they want to get in contact with me, I'd love some more people for polling day. We really need people on polling day at all the polling places. We have about 45 polling booths in Robertson.
Really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable how many there is.
45.
Yeah. And so there's some polling booths at the moment that we aren't able to cover, and it is a big day for people, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the Saturday the 21st. So if people want to help Save Australia, apparently 20% of people who come to the polling booth are still undecided. So if we're there with our yellow shirts, our smiles, our freedom light that we have, and we're giving out how to vote cards, then we believe we'll get more votes on the day. And that really could make a difference to whether I get into Canberra or whether I don't.
I just had an idea.
Yep.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so that's basically what you can do in this short amount of time. We also have the pre-polling booths, which there's 3 of them in our electorate, which it goes for every day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night. And Liberal and Labor are there handing out their how to vote cards. And like, for example, we were at Gosford pre-poll yesterday, and there was probably 20 Liberal and Labor people and 2 UAP people.
Really?
Yeah, it's very overwhelming. They really believe that they deserve the space and that we're interlopers, and they behave like that. So it's an interesting time, and one Labor supporter was extremely rude to me. But there's some lovely people too that just believe what they believe, and we're all humans, and that's the democratic process. But yeah, it's interesting, and I know the same thing has happened at Woy Woy pre-poll, is that there was some, you know, people that weren't polite and weren't respectful to other human beings, and that to me is the entitlement that the major parties think that they have over Australia, and we've got to break that system.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we'll help any way we can, and thanks for coming on, BJ.
Thank you.
Thank you.